Right now, my phone screen is buzzing with notifications. Missed calls from numbers I no longer recognize, but whose area codes are all too familiar. Texts, emails, voicemails piling up, each one a frantic plea or an angry demand. They want answers. They want to know where I am, why I left, and when I'm coming back. But they already know why. They just don't like the answer. They don't like that their comfortable world, built on my back and my generosity, crumbled the moment I quietly walked away. It took me years to understand their game, years of being the easy target, the dependable one, the mother and grandmother who always said yes, no matter the personal cost. I poured my life, my savings, my emotional energy into them, believing that was what family did. I was wrong. So very, very wrong. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe family should protect, not exploit each other. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. It started subtly, as these things often do. After my husband, Robert, passed away 5 years ago, I found myself with more time and, truthfully, more resources than I'd anticipated. Robert had been a careful planner, and he'd left me comfortably secure. Not wealthy by any means, but free from financial worry for the rest of my life, provided I was sensible. My children, Sarah and Tom, and their spouses, Mark and Lisa, were, in their own ways, struggling. Sarah and Mark had 2 young children, always complaining about daycare costs and needing bigger cars. Tom and Lisa were trying to start a business that seemed to consume vast amounts of money without ever showing a profit. I wanted to help. They were my family, my legacy. Robert and I had always believed in supporting our children. So I did. A check here, a bill paid there, a generous gift for a birthday or holiday that stretched a little further each year. My home, a modest but comfortable house on a quiet street, became the default gathering place. Family dinners were frequent, holidays were spent here. I didn't mind. I liked having them close. But the conversations began to shift. They stopped asking if I could help and started discussing how much I could contribute. Mom, the transmission on the SUV died, and we really need something reliable with the kids. Could you help with a down payment? A good chunk, Sarah would say, her voice light, as if discussing the weather. Tom would talk about a crucial piece of equipment for his business, looking at me pointedly. If I just had this one thing, Mom, everything would change. The potential return on investment is huge. Huge. I helped. I dipped into savings more than I should have. I justified it by telling myself this was my purpose now, to ease their burdens, to ensure their success. I saw their struggles, or what they presented as struggles, and my heart ached for them. My house was paid off, my needs were few, certainly fewer than theirs with young families and ambitious dreams. My trust in them was absolute. I had raised them, after all. I had taught them values, integrity. They would never take advantage of me. That thought was a bedrock foundation of my world. It took a long, painful time for that foundation to crack. The first real tremor happened during a family dinner shortly after I decided to downsize slightly. I was considering selling a small piece of land Robert had owned separately, nothing major, just a few acres outside of town that required upkeep and generated no income. I mentioned it casually, thinking they might have opinions on real estate agents. Their reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Sell it? Why would you sell it, Mom? Tom asked, leaning forward. That land could be perfect for expanding our business. We could build a small warehouse there. Or, Lisa jumped in, we could build a couple of tiny homes for rental income. Think of the passive income stream, Mom. You'd own the land, we'd manage the rentals, and split the profit. Sarah and Mark quickly countered. Honestly, Mom, rentals? That's a headache. With the value of land going up, you should hold on to it for the grandchildren. It could be their inheritance. Mark and I could manage it for you, keep the taxes paid. They weren't discussing my plans, they were discussing their plans for my asset. It wasn't about what I wanted or needed, but how this piece of property could serve them. I remember feeling a prickle of unease, a sense of being viewed not as an independent person with my own wishes, but as a resource to be allocated. I mumbled something about just exploring options and quickly changed the subject. The conversation left a sour taste. It was the first hint that their perception of what was mine was increasingly blurring with what was theirs. A few months later, the conversations intensified, moving from hints to outright expectations. Mark started talking about needing to move his parents into their already small home and how crowded they would be. Casually, he mentioned how large my house was. "Plenty of room here, isn't there, Carol?" he'd said, glancing at Sarah, who nodded in agreement. They didn't suggest they move in, not explicitly, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Lisa started asking detailed questions about my investments, my retirement accounts. "Are you sure you're in the right funds, Mom? Tom's got a knack for this. He could look over your portfolio for you." Their interest felt less like concern and more like inventory. I started becoming more guarded, offering less unsolicited help, saying I needed to be more careful with my spending. This was met with varying degrees of disappointment and thinly veiled annoyance. The calls for money or help continued, often escalating in urgency or emotional pressure. Sarah would call in tears about the children needing something. Tom would describe a business setback that only a significant cash infusion could fix. The blame began to creep in. If I said no, even gently, I was suddenly not understanding or not supportive. One afternoon, Sarah called, distraught. "Mom, I don't know what we're going to do. Little Timmy needs braces, and our insurance won't cover much, and the car needs tires, and everything's just piling up. We were really counting on you helping us out with that trip next month, but maybe we just have to cancel everything. The kids will be so disappointed." The trip was a non-essential family vacation I'd been asked to fund as a collective Christmas gift. It wasn't about Timmy's braces or the tires. It was about the vacation. The guilt was a heavy cloak. I felt a familiar surge of obligation, but beneath it, a flicker of something new, resentment. Why was their financial strain always my emergency? Why was their inability to manage their finances framed as my lack of generosity? The real turning point, the moment the foundation didn't just crack, but shattered, happened unexpectedly. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had gone over to Tom and Lisa's house to drop off some old furniture I thought they could use. They weren't home, but Lisa had left the back door unlocked, knowing I was coming. I let myself in and called out, but got no answer. As I was placing a lamp in their living room, I overheard voices coming from their patio. They were talking on the phone, and their words cut through the afternoon quiet like a knife. It was Lisa talking to Sarah. "Yeah, well, she said she needed to be more careful." Can you believe that? More careful? What exactly is she saving it for? "She's not going anywhere. It's just sitting there." Sarah's voice, tinny through the phone, responded, "I know." And the way she acted about the land. Like it's some national treasure, not just empty dirt waiting to be used. Honestly, it's frustrating. We're her children. It should be ours anyway. Why is she being so difficult? Lisa laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. Exactly. It's like she doesn't understand how much we need this. Tom calculated it. If she just signed over power of attorney, we could manage her accounts, make some smart investments, get access to that money she's hoarding. He thinks we could double it easily. For her, of course. But we'd need access. Mark's looking into the legal side, Sarah replied. Like, is she even capable of managing things anymore? She's getting older. We just need to show the lawyer she's not making sound decisions, like saying no to helping her own family. My blood ran cold. Power of attorney? Not capable? Hoarding money? This wasn't just about borrowing or asking for help. This was about taking control, about viewing me as an obstacle to their access to my money. They weren't discussing me with affection or concern. They were discussing a strategy. My mind reeled. Every request, every sigh, every story of hardship, every pointed comment about my age or my capability suddenly clicked into place. It was a performance. It was manipulation. I didn't stay to confront them. I quietly placed the lamp down and walked out, closing the door softly behind me. I got into my car and drove home in a daze. The house felt different, colder. Every object seemed to mock me with memories of family gatherings, of shared laughter and supposed closeness that now felt utterly fake. They saw me as a bank account, an asset to be managed and, if necessary, taken over. The pain was physical, a tight knot in my chest. Betrayal isn't just an action. It's the shattering of trust, the realization that the people you love most fundamentally do not love you back in the way you thought. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed conversations, piecing together the subtle hints, the manipulative tactics I had been blind to. The way Tom always volunteered to help with my online banking, the times Lisa had accidentally seen statements I left out, Sarah's constant questions about my health and memory. They weren't caring, they were gathering information. They were assessing my vulnerability. The initial shock gave way to a quiet, simmering anger. Not a frantic rage, but a cold, steady determination. They thought I wasn't capable? They thought I was an easy mark? They were about to be very, very wrong. My first defensive action was small but significant. The next morning, before doing anything else, I went to my bank. I spoke to the branch manager, a kind woman named Brenda who had known me for years. I explained, vaguely, that I was concerned about unauthorized access to my accounts and wanted to increase security. I changed all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication on everything, and put a note on my file requiring my in-person verification for any significant transaction or change to my account structure. It felt like placing the first brick in a new wall. The following days were a blur of quiet activity. I didn't confront my children or their spouses. I acted normally, accepting calls, listening to their complaints, but inside, I was calculating. I began documenting everything. I started a detailed journal, noting dates and times of calls, visits, and conversations, summarizing their requests and my responses. I dug out old financial records, statements, receipts for gifts and loans, most of which were never repaid, property deeds. I took screenshots of questionable texts or emails. I was building a case, not for a court necessarily, but for myself, a factual counterpoint to their narrative of my supposed incapacity or their entitlement. My next step was crucial: legal consultation. I called the lawyer who had handled Robert's estate, Mr. Harrison. He was older, pragmatic, and had a reputation for being sharp but fair. I made an appointment, feeling nervous but resolute. Sitting in his office, detailing the overheard conversation, the requests for money, the probing questions, the talk of power of attorney and questioning my capacity felt surreal. Like I was reporting on strangers, not my own family. Mr. Harrison listened patiently, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice calm, "what you've described is a clear pattern of financial and emotional exploitation. Their discussion about power of attorney and questioning your capacity is particularly concerning. It suggests they are not just hoping for your money, but actively planning to take control of your assets, potentially against your will." He explained my rights. As long as I was of sound mind, I had complete control over my finances and property. No one, not even my children, had a right to it or the authority to manage it without my explicit, legally documented consent. He advised me on several immediate steps, updating my will to clearly state my intentions and naming an executor outside the family, establishing a durable power of attorney with someone I trusted implicitly. I thought of my cousin Ellen. Sensible and geographically distant, and potentially setting up a trust to manage assets if I wanted an extra layer of protection or wished to distribute funds under specific conditions later. He also advised sending a formal cease and desist letter if their pressure became too much, and warned that if they tried legal action to challenge my capacity, my documentation would be vital. Leaving his office, I felt a sense of clarity mixed with profound sadness. The legal reality was stark, but empowering. The emotional reality was devastating. My children were not just selfish, they were potentially malicious, willing to use legal means to strip me of my autonomy. The phrase family should protect, not exploit, echoed in my mind. They were doing the opposite. The family pressure intensified after that. Perhaps they sensed a shift in me, a new coolness in my voice. Or perhaps their timeline for gaining control was accelerating. Tom called, insisting I co-sign a loan for his business premises. Sarah started complaining that my house was too large for one person, and wasn't I lonely? Wasn't it time to consider moving somewhere smaller, maybe closer to them? Or perhaps, she suggested, one of them could move in with me to help out and keep me company. The second mandatory antagonist cameo moment happened during a tense Sunday brunch they insisted on having at my house. Lisa brought up my investments again, pushing hard. Mom, seriously, you could be making so much more. Tom looked at the market, and you're missing out on huge gains just letting that money sit there. Let him help you. I looked at her, then at Tom, Sarah, and Mark. Their faces were a mixture of feigned concern and blatant expectation. I took a deep breath. My financial affairs are in order, thank you, Lisa, I said, keeping my voice steady. I have an advisor I trust, and I'm comfortable with my current strategy. Lisa's smile faltered. But Tom could do better. He's your son, he has your best interests at heart. Do you? I asked, my gaze direct. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Because it sounded the other day like your main interest was accessing my accounts. The color drained from Tom's face. Lisa's eyes widened, darting between me and Sarah. Sarah looked furious. What are you talking about, Mom? Accessing your accounts? That's ridiculous. Is it? I challenged, the years of suppressed frustration finally surfacing, albeit quietly. I overheard your conversation, Lisa. About power of attorney. About me hoarding money. About questioning my capacity. Silence fell over the table, thick and heavy. Their carefully constructed facade crumbled, replaced by shock and guilt, quickly morphing into anger. You were spying on us? Tom sputtered. Spying. I repeated. In my own house? No, I was delivering furniture you left the door unlocked for. I just happened to hear you discussing how to get control of my money and whether I was capable enough to stop you. That's not fair, Mom. Sarah cried, her voice rising. We were just worried about you. Worried you might be taken advantage of. We just want what's best. What's best for whom, Sarah? I asked softly, but with an iron edge. What's best for me, or what's best for your bank balance? Because it sounded a lot like the latter. Mark, who had been quiet, finally spoke up, his tone suddenly threatening. Look, Carol, we are your family. We are looking out for you. Maybe you aren't seeing things clearly. Maybe you need help managing things. We can make this easy, or we can make it hard. This was it. The thinly veiled threat. The confirmation of their true intentions. The knot in my chest loosened, replaced by a chilling calm. They weren't my family in any meaningful sense of the word. They were predators in disguise. You want to make it hard? I said, standing up. I assure you, you do not. This brunch is over. I think you should all leave. They protested, argued, tried to guilt me, but I was firm. I didn't raise my voice, didn't yell. I simply gathered their coats, opened the front door, and waited. They left, faces red with a mixture of indignation and dawning fear. As the door closed behind them, I knew there was no going back. The relationship was irreparably broken. Now, it was time for strategy. The evidence gathering intensified. I contacted Mr. Harrison again, updating him on the confrontation and Mark's veiled threat. He looked grim. They've shown their hand, Mrs. Miller. And that threat, we need to be proactive. He recommended securing my assets immediately and establishing clear legal boundaries. This led to the major turning point. Based on Mr. Harrison's advice and the documentation I'd meticulously gathered, I took decisive action. I changed the beneficiaries on all my accounts and life insurance policies, removing my children and naming my cousin Ellen and a few charities that were important to me. I worked with Mr. Harrison to create a comprehensive, ironclad, durable power of attorney, naming Ellen as my agent. We also drafted a new will, distributing my assets precisely as I wished, with specific clauses addressing potential challenges from my children. Crucially, we set up a simple trust for my house, transferring ownership into the trust with me as the primary beneficiary, making it much harder for anyone to force a sale or claim on the property without significant legal hurdles that my documents would defend against. While these legal maneuvers were underway, I made other preparations, quietly and methodically. I opened a new bank account at a different institution across town, transferring a significant portion of my liquid assets there. I installed a security system in my house with cameras. I spoke to my closest friends, explaining the situation without excessive drama, asking for their support and discretion. I even started packing, sorting through belongings, deciding what was truly important. My manipulators, meanwhile, seemed to oscillate between sulking silence and renewed pressure. They'd send saccharine texts, "Thinking of you, Mom. Miss you," followed days later by angry messages. "We need to talk about this. You can't just cut us off." They tried showing up at the house unannounced, but I didn't answer the door unless I was expecting someone. My resolve was hardening, tempered by the cold steel of legal documents and strategic planning. The smoking gun that cemented my legal weapon wasn't a single document, but the pattern of their behavior combined with their explicit statements. Mr. Harrison felt confident that if they tried to challenge my capacity, my journal, the recorded conversation, which I had managed to retrieve from my phone's recording app after the fact, and the consistent, rational steps I was taking to protect myself were overwhelming evidence that I was not only capable, but acting intelligently to defend my interests against their clear predatory intent. The legal strategy was simple: make it legally, financially, and emotionally too difficult for them to proceed. Erecting the trust around my house was a major part of this. It complicated any potential legal claim significantly. They seemed to misinterpret my quiet preparation as defeat or passive resistance. They made a crucial mistake. They underestimated me. They thought I was scared, isolated, and clinging to hope for reconciliation. They believed their guilt trips and threats would eventually wear me down. They were overconfident, assuming my love for them would always override my instinct for self-preservation. They didn't realize that my quiet withdrawal wasn't sadness. It was strategy. The climax arrived not with a dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet efficiency of the legal system. Mr. Harrison sent letters. Formal, brief, and unequivocal. One to each child and their spouse. They stated, unequivocally, that I was aware of their intentions regarding my assets and person, that I had taken legal steps to secure my property and finances, had updated my estate planning, and that any further attempts to pressure, threaten, or legally challenge me would be met with immediate legal action, including potential restraining orders and exposure of their documented attempts at manipulation. They were informed that my legal affairs were being handled by Mr. Harrison's firm, and all future communication regarding financial or property matters should go through them. The reaction was immediate and explosive. My phone, which had been relatively quiet, erupted. Calls from Sarah, Tom, Mark, Lisa, even some extended family members they'd clearly enlisted as flying monkeys. The first calls were attempts at damage control, feigned hurt, and outrage. "Mom, how could you? Sending lawyers? To your own children." Then came the anger. "You can't do this. This is our inheritance. You're being manipulated by that lawyer." Finally, the panic set in. "Mom, we need to talk. This is crazy. Pick up the phone." I didn't answer. I didn't respond to texts or emails. I had created a barrier, a boundary enforced by law and my own unbreakable resolve. Their shock and panic were palpable through the sheer volume and increasing desperation of their messages. They had lost control. They had pushed too hard, assumed too much, and now faced the consequences of treating me not as their mother, but as a resource. Mr. Harrison handled any further legal posturing from their side swiftly and decisively, armed with the evidence I had gathered. There was no legal ground for them to challenge my capacity. My detailed, logical steps to protect myself were the strongest counterargument possible. Their attempts to claim entitlement to my assets failed because my property and finances were legally secured, and my will clearly stated my intentions. The truth, supported by documentation, began to filter out to extended family, not from me, but through the legal actions taken and their own frantic, inconsistent stories. Some family members, initially supportive of my children, began to distance themselves as the facts emerged. In the immediate aftermath, there was a profound quiet. The phone calls eventually tapered off, replaced by silence. I was alone in my house, the same house filled with memories, but now it felt different. It was truly mine again, safe and secure. The legal victories were confirmed quietly, the trust established, the will updated, my assets protected. My children faced the consequences of their actions not in a courtroom drama, but in the silent, irrefutable reality that their plan had failed completely. They received nothing they felt entitled to, and worse, they lost the source they had so carelessly tried to exploit. My new boundaries weren't just legal, they were emotional. I had grieved the loss of the family I thought I had. Now, I was building a new life on my own terms. I reconnected with friends, pursued hobbies I had neglected. My inner peace wasn't a sudden wave of happiness, but a quiet settling, a sense of dignity restored. There was no possibility of reconciliation, not in any meaningful way. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. Standing up for myself, though painful, was the most empowering thing I had ever done. It taught me that self-preservation is not selfish, and that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people you love. My quiet victory wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my autonomy, and my peace. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself.